With the signing of the Paris Peace Agreement in January of 1973, suddenly everything changed about Vietnam. There I was in Chau Doc province on the Mekong River, on the Vietnam-Cambodian border and the Mekong Delta. And the announcement came, and at first it provoked an outpouring of hope and among Vietnamese that at last the war was over. People were literally dancing for joy as they celebrated the Lunar New Year. Everything seemed so auspicious. And the United States military, the U.S. Army and Navy, Air Force presence in Vietnam, all was now going to be drawn down. All the advisors would leave in the next few months, and everyone had to be out of the country, all the military out of the country by June of 1973. It's a 6-month period, at which time, when the last American service personnel had left, then our POWs would be freed by Hanoi, and that phase of the war would be over. So we went from a large military advisory team, 50, 60, 70 individuals, quickly down to three civilians, 2 USAID officers who remained to oversee the development projects, and me. I now reverted back to being a State Department officer and was assigned as a Vice Consul to the new Consulate General diplomatic post that was opening in the regional capital of Canton, or Canton, as most Americans would say it. And I would now be out in this remote province reporting on the situation and traveling along the border, monitoring the ceasefire and what would happen, and the developments. Would the North Vietnamese now stop infiltration from Hanoi down the Ho Chi Minh Trail into the Mekong Delta along the way? And so I was suddenly sort of all alone out there, an unusual assignment. We lived in the same compound with Vietnamese military guards around our compound. We were co-located with the South Vietnamese, but now I had this new mission. And so I would be out setting my own agenda, going off to report on whatever intrigued me, whatever I could report on. During the first weeks of the ceasefire, it was anything but a ceasefire. There were still a lot of shooting, a lot of incidents, but gradually inside Vietnam, the two contending enemy, North Vietnamese Viet Cong, South Vietnamese, disengaged to a certain degree after about 3 months, and the level of combat and activity subsided. But I was sending in spot reports. My reports I'd write by hand at night, sitting in my quarters, and once a week a plane would land, an Air America, sort of a U.S. government contract airline that operated around Southeast Asia. The pilots were American citizens. I'd go out to the landing strip, you can't call it an airport, but out to the landing strip. The pilot would pull up his one-engine plane, open the door, the engine's still running. I'd hand him the report and envelope with my reports. He'd fly them down to Canton, where there were American cleared staff who could type up the reports, and they would be sent as telegrams or sometimes longer pieces that would be sent, called airgrams. So these are State Department means of communication. So I was suddenly, after being part of the military Assistance Command Advisory Program for 5 years. Now a State Department officer, reverted back to my intended role when I joined the State Department in 1967. 5 years later, I've had a first tour with an amazing array of experiences, and now seeing and reporting on what would be happening as the ceasefire is implemented, and hopefully peace was going to come to the entire country after so many years of war.